okay, we have got one absolutely awesome question, just one, but I feel like this is a question that so many of you are going to relate to, and even if you don't have this problem, I think yes, I think there's a lot to be learnt from this question, just with regards to supporting your child to have a really healthy relationship with food. So the question is, my husband keeps bribing my 3-year-old with lollies, and it's making her behaviour and health really suffer. I have addressed it with him, but we aren't able to come to an agreement on anything. When it's just me and the 3-year-old, I refuse lollies and her behaviour is great. But when he is around, the tantrums are really challenging. Any tips? You start.
Yes, sure. So this can be really challenging for you. And I guess, first of all, I just want to kind of normalize that this is really tough. I can kind of relate. I had a similar issue with my husband with our son at the very beginning. And it's really hard. So the first thing that's really important to do is to only discuss it with your husband when you're calm. So there's no emotion in the discussion, and to make sure when you do discuss it, you use I language. So because it can kind of lead to conflict, this kind of issue.
Because it is important as parents to be on the same page, isn't it?
It is.
In raising kids.
Totally. And not easy when you think of he's going to come from a whole different background of being parented, a whole different family culture than you. And then when we come together with our partners, we kind of got to create our own culture as a family. And that does lead to lots of issues, in my experience anyway. Lots of ruptures or disagreements, and the important piece to know is that that's really normal, and that together you work on the repair or the getting clear on what is important for your family and your relationship moving forward. What is really important with that is that you talk about this when you're calm, so you get really clear on what you see, what you need. You get really clear on how it impacts you. So, and when you do that, like I said before, it's really important to use I statements. So when you give, let's call her Lily, a lolly, I feel really frustrated because then for the next few hours she seems really discontent. And all of the days leading up to you giving her that lolly, I've put things in place to kind of ensure that she's eating well, she knows where she stands. And I get frustrated because I've got to start back at the beginning. And the key piece here is I'm using I language. I feel frustrated. It's not
as opposed to you language.
As opposed to you keep frustrating me, you keep not listening, you keep what's
important. Because that's confrontational, right?
Because then he's the one shouldering the blame. And that just leads to conflict. So it's more when you're calm and he's calm, and hopefully the 3-year-old's not around, just, hey, I need you to really hear me on something. When you give our 3-year-old lollies and bribe her to, if I give you a lolly, will you do this? I feel really disrespected because I've asked you many times not to do that. And I feel really annoyed at you, and I feel myself pull away from you. So it's really helpful for you to actually share calmly how his actions impact you. And how they impact you and your capacity to parent her, and also how they impact your relationship with him. So that he's kind of, it's learning to adult, to be honest, using I language. Most of us aren't great at adulting. No. We're not great at conflict resolution. We're not good at boundaries. And so it's you being really clear when you're by yourself in your own mind, like, how does this impact me? And it's not about blaming him. It's about sharing with him. When you do this, this is what happens for me.
And also sharing what you see, like the impact on the child,
100%.
On the 3-year-old,
yes.
which, we're going to discuss some things that we see as being impactful. Obviously we agree with you that bribing a 3-year-old with lollies is not a good idea.
Yeah.
For me, the first thing that stands out is the bribing piece, because I know we've spoken a lot about bribing and coercing children using food, and the impact that has on so many different levels. But let's just start with, while we're talking about relationships, let's just start with that bribing piece and how that not only impacts their relationship as they grow with food, but also with motivation and other aspects of their life. And then we'll circle back to health and mood and so forth.
Yeah. Yep. So healthy relationships are not transactional. Healthy relationships are, I want to be with you because I want to be with you. I want to clean up my room because I want to have a nice space to be in, and I know it makes you happy. That's kind of
as opposed to, I want to be with you because you give me lollies.
Yes.
Or I want to be with you because I want to clean up my room because you're going to reward me with food.
Yes.
That I want.
Yes. When relationships are transactional, it's not good for us as human beings.
Yeah.
We need, especially children need that. No matter what, I'm here and I love you.
Yeah.
That's unconditional. It's not transactional. Transactional is, I'll give you my love if you do what I tell you to do. So when we bribe with kids, we're kind of already setting them up that relationships are about a transaction. When I give you a lolly, when you give me a lolly, I'll do the thing. So it's not helpful. And just from that perspective.
It flows through not just to your relationship as a family, but also their ability to do things and succeed in life almost, doesn't it?
Well, there's that piece, but also relationships.
Yeah, and self-esteem that flows on because of that.
Totally. That I'm only worth something if you're giving me that whole transaction rather than we're in relationship just to be together.
Yeah.
It's like if I do something, you'll give me something, and then that's our relationship. So there's that relationship piece.
Yeah.
And then there is the intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation piece, which is when you bribe a child to do something, they get rewarded by something outside themselves, and they actually lose the motivation to do something. So they did a study a few years ago with kids, and they went into a classroom and they saw kids drawing. And they were like, let's test out what happens to the kids that are great drawers when we give them a reward. Let's test what happens to the kids that kind of don't mind drawing when we give them a reward. Let's see what happens to the kids that hate drawing when we give them a reward. And what they found is that to begin with, when kids got given the reward, they all drew a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But then when they followed them, all of the kids started to stop and dislike drawing.
Right.
Because the motivation for doing it came from outside them.
Yes.
From the reward, not from inside. So even the kids that loved drawing started to dislike drawing. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and quite sad.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is what bribing or giving our kids things to do things kind of sets them up for.
It's interesting. You just talking now, I'm thinking of some situations. My kids have been involved in various sports through their lifetimes, and I can remember some instances where parents have bribed kids. If you get this many goals in the game, I'll buy you an ice cream, or and those kids, funnily enough, now just with you talking, I'm thinking back to those kids who were really talented in their sport, are no longer in that sport, and I wonder if, again, because they're not motivated from within, that they've lost interest because, like you said, that extrinsic motivation only goes so far.
Totally.
Yeah.
And they've proven it over and over. They've done different experiments where they've tested that.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to set your daughter up for, is it a daughter? Yes, your
Yes,
daughter
it is
up
daughter,
for
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So, and the bribing just leads to so many issues, over time. She's only 3. And to already be bribing her for lollies, kids at that age love helping. They love doing stuff. It's like this is when you want to kind of engage them to, hey, help mummy do this or help mummy
and to
do
develop that extrinsic motivation.
Intrinsic.
Sorry, intrinsic. Sorry.
You're right. Yeah. Well, they're already, because kids at this age, there's a developmental milestone that Erickson talks about. And so he's created a model. He's a famous psychologist, and he talks about different stages that we go through. And this stage, I think it's pretty early on in childhood, but it's all about letting kids do things, and that they have this impulse to do things, to want to help.
Yeah.
And that if we miss that stage, they kind of it impacts their self-esteem.
Yes.
So she's in that stage where she'll want to be helping and doing things. But if you bring the lollies in, it kind of takes that out. So you're robbing her of that developmental stage that's already naturally within her to want to do things and want to help.
And I love this so much because my brain automatically just jumps, as I'm sure many parents listening or, even you yourself, probably your brain would jump to the health implications. And you have mentioned that you've definitely noticed a change in mood. But I love the fact that it goes beyond the immediate reaction.
Huge. Lifetime. It sets her up for a lifetime of ways of being in relationship, ways of wanting
getting
to
stuff done.
Yeah. Like you think of
achievement.
The stuff. Yes, totally. And of feeling really fulfilled for what you do rather than just, I'm getting a paycheck at the end of the week. Like for happiness.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah. It's so powerful. But definitely circling back to health.
Yeah.
And, you noticing the changes in mood. The long-term impacts of setting up someone to want to eat sweet things is, I think, fairly well known. I mean, we have at the moment in Australia, over 45% of children have one or more chronic illnesses. In the US, it's over 60% of children have one or more chronic illnesses. And many chronic illnesses are driven by inflammation. And one thing that we know is that sugar creates inflammation in the body. We know there's like an epidemic of diabetes in increasingly younger children. I've read of cases of children that are still toddlers developing diabetes. So, and it's not lollies, they seem to be fun and engaging and yummy at the time, but your little one is so young and it's really not necessary. It's not a necessary part of her diet.
Well, I think of what you say when you say a little body.
Yeah, that's
and
it.
How
like
every mouthful
needs to count as much as possible without putting pressure on parents.
Yeah.
But, kids need more nourishment in their toddler years and in their early years than any other time in their life, yet their capacity to be nourished is so much less because, their tummies are much smaller, so they get fuller quicker. So we need to view every opportunity, as much as possible as an opportunity to nourish our kids. Also, you've acknowledged that you have 100% recognised that her mood is affected. One of the ways that sugar and lollies affect mood, I mean, apart from additives and preservatives, which many kids have sensitivities to, most kids do, to be honest. It's just some parents recognise it and others don't. But apart from the additives and all of the extra stuff, if we just focus on sugar alone, when you eat something that is like pure refined sugar like a lolly, your blood sugars spike, and at that point you kind of feel okay. A child might be a bit stimulated at that point, but then what happens is your body is designed to protect you against this sudden flux of sugar. So it releases hormones that force that sugar into your cells, and other hormones are released like cortisol, which then creates this big dip in blood sugar levels. And with that comes, moodiness. You'll often see these kind of high and low fluctuations with kids, where they're high as a kite 1 minute, happy, laughing, crying and screaming the next moment. And we were discussing, before we started recording, how a child who has a fluctuating mood often gets known for that, and develops self-esteem issues from a very young age, because they're told that they're, not able to concentrate, or that they're grumpy, or that, they're tantruming or naughty.
Well, when their blood sugars are going up and down, it's really hard for them to regulate their nervous system.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're
and
going
it is out
into
of their
highs
control
and
ultimately.
lows.
Even as adults, it's uncontrollable.
And it can just set up their system to find it hard to find a kind of a balanced, we call it a window. And so it just has such a big impact, these little bits of sugar for kids over time. And like Georgia was saying, when if your daughter does have these sugar ups and downs, and then they do have these tantrums, or they get moody, then they get labelled things with family members, with kindy, with school, and then it can make them feel like, oh, I'm that naughty kid, or so. And I mean, maybe that's extreme, but it's all things to think about. That sugar's not just sugar, and giving a child a lolly to get them to do things just sets it's like a domino effect.
The effects are far-reaching.
They're really wide-reaching, like relationally, motivation, and health-wise, just across the board.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've thought of ways, things that we thought of some tips.
Yes, some extra tips. So we've covered a lot already, but just a couple of extra things. One is, realistically, and this might be an argument that your partner comes to you with, is that, if you withhold lollies and treats, then that in itself can also set up a poor relationship with food. So it might be that when you're having this discussion with your husband, that you put a boundary in place. And a boundary in my family, and it's something that I found worked really, really well with my kids, particularly when they were little, was we had treat days. And it is something that we've spoken about, and we do speak about in the program. But just to recap, treat days are basically days that that your child is going to be allowed a treat, and it's something that you negotiate with your partner perhaps, and then you relay what those days are with your daughter. Even at the age of 3, she definitely, my kids were that young when we had treat days in place. So that basically looks like, on a Tuesday and a Saturday, they're treat days, so they're days that you get to pick a treat. And one of the things that I found was often, say, if I was shopping on a Monday and my kids would spy, a Kinder Surprise or one of their favourite little treats that they loved, and they started badgering me for it, it was a really great way to teach them delayed gratification as well. So
it's another huge important thing.
It is another huge important thing. I would buy them the treat then and there, but they would know they don't get to eat that treat until it's a treat day. So it's a really great way to have a boundary around treats, and keep everyone accountable to those boundaries. Is that there are set days when you have a treat, that's when we buy a lolly, or we buy a chocolate bar, or whatever it is. But I loved your tip around, also one thing we talk about a lot here is planting seeds, and the importance of education. And this can't start early enough, to be honest. A 3-year-old is very, very capable of of receiving those little seeds. They might not mean anything and nothing will start to grow immediately from those seeds. So you can explain what planting a seed looks like, because I love the way you do that.
Thank you. So with a 3-year-old, it's really important that you start supporting her to link how she feels after she eats certain foods. So, and not in a judgy way.
And not at the time.
No.
Not if she's melting down, having a tantrum. That's not the time to link.
Just afterwards. Like, oh, wow, did you notice before you started to get upset that you'd had 3 red frogs? I know for me, if I have red frogs, I start to feel yucky after. I feel really up for a while and then I feel yucky after. And then you leave it at that.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, so you're just letting her little brain start to go, to link, what she's eaten with how she feels after. And that's it. You're just planting a seed. So you're just kind of, she may not get it in the moment. And it's not about that. It's about over her lifetime. She starts to, the information you've put into her and you water over time starts to grow fruit. And so she starts to be able to join the dots between when I eat this, I feel this, or when I do this, I feel this. And this is really important, again, as they get older. When they're teenagers, we have no control over what they eat or what they do, but we're wanting her to join the dots between cause and effect. Yeah.
And it's something as parents of teenagers and young adults is that we both know that's something we haven't succeeded in every area of parenting, but that's one area I can safely say that I've succeeded, because my kids 100% understand the cause and effect of what they eat, right back to, I can remember probably the first time I really got the opportunity to do this was my son went to a party. I think he was just in prep, so he was pretty young, maybe 4 or 5. And he ate those red Frankfurt sausages from the party table, and then he threw up afterwards. And so, I just said to him, I wonder if it was those red sausages. They always used to make me feel sick. That was it. That's all I said. But from that point onwards, he actually, he was sick enough to then he joined the dots immediately. He didn't need any reinforcement. But, there's other things. And, when they are adults or, teenagers, obviously things like more dangerous things, again, like alcohol come into play. And again, it's just about joining the dots. This isn't going to stop them from drinking alcohol, perhaps, but it's going to help them to join the dots.
Definitely.
And just have that bodily awareness, I think, is just so valuable.
Yeah, and again, that internal awareness. It's coming from inside them. Yeah. With the educating, it is just like Georgia said, just planting a seed, as in, when I feel like this, it's not lecturing them about sugar and this and that.
No.
It's really simple.
No, I can remember my hairdresser hearing her talking to one of her kids about, say, like a red frog being a bit tricky because it makes you want to eat it because it's colourful and it tastes really yummy. But then it tricks you because afterwards you might not necessarily feel so great from eating that red frog.
That's a lovely way to put it.
And I really loved that use of her use of language around that. I thought, that's really clever because, again, she wasn't lecturing them. She wasn't saying, this food's bad, it's not good for you,
or don't do this and do that.
Totally. It's high in sugar. Kids don't need to know. A 3-year-old doesn't need to understand
and they still want to feel they have some choice.
Totally.
If we say don't and do, then they're going to generally do what we say don't.
And that's what I love with treat days, because I gave my kids choice.
Exactly.
On those days, they got choice.
Which is empowering and stops the power struggles.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully that helps.
Yes.
Please let us know if you have any follow-up questions. And, we're here to receive any and all of your questions. So keep them coming. This was a great question.
Yes,
and as I
thank
said,
you so much.
Yeah, I feel like a lot, hopefully it's helped you, but I feel that a lot of parents there's so many lessons in this one question, I feel, anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
Have a great month. We'll see you next month.
Bye.